Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our final session of C Squared for Life, or College and Career Ready for Life, here May 3rd in San Antonio. Do want to welcome everyone to Region 20 and thank them again so much for hosting us here as they have for all of our sessions. I know that we have some other folks joining us. We have SAISD who's with us in the room today, and then I can see Northside. Ms. Fryer, I see you over there at Northside, and I guess Denise is walking around somewhere. There she is. And I don't know if Harlandale is with us yet, but they should be joining us this morning. So we're glad to have all of you here. I do want to remind you and remind the folks that will be tuning in later that this program, C Squared for Life, began as part of an idea to bring in the college and career readiness staff and the professionals who work with students across our community to get them in on a college knowledge conversation, if you would. Again, we know that you all have wonderful meetings on your own campuses, but the idea was to kind of create a community conversation where all of us were talking about the same topic, had access to the same experts, or could call on these experts later on if we needed them. For example, some of the things that we've talked about this year are the Hazelwood Act, the Foster Youth Tuition Benefit, FAFSA and TASFA, choosing a college, choosing a major, and we've tried to bring in different folks from across the community who are experts in these areas. My name is Belinda Saldana, and I'm the Director of Community Outreach at UTSA, and it's been my pleasure to work with SAISD, Harlandale, Northside, and Region 20 to bring these sessions to you. We're really excited today because we have some other wonderful experts, some college professors. The goal all along has been to help students access college, access higher education. We've done FAFSAs with them, filled out financial aid applications, worked with them on scholarships. You all have probably wrote countless letters of recommendation. But now what we're going to have is we're going to have college professors, faculty from different universities talk to us about what are the expectations in the college classroom. What do students need to know, and how can you help your current students and your future seniors be prepared for the college classroom? I want to introduce our panel today and tell you who we have with us. We have Patrick Fontenot from Northwest Vista College. And if you just raise your hand so they know who you are. We have Dr. Jonathan Lee from San Antonio College, Dr. Amber Aubone from St. Mary's University, Dr. Aaron Castle from the University of Texas at San Antonio, and Lisa Johns also from the University of Texas at San Antonio. So we're so pleased to have them with us today. I do want to remind you that this is a conversation. And so I'm going to begin the dialogue and begin the panel, but I want you, whether you're here at with the SAISD or Harlandale or Northside, I want you to feel free to add your comments, to add your questions, so that we really are creating a conversation. If there's something that you are doing or some knowledge that you have, please feel free to share that, because that's what makes this a very valuable session. I want to remind you all as well that later on this is going to be available on the internet, and as I mentioned to the folks that joined us last session, this is being viewed by folks across the state and perhaps across the country. I shared with the folks that were here last time that I was in Laredo for a P16 meeting, and they had a copy of our C Squared for Life website page, and we're talking about this program. So people are going to tune in later. So feel free to share your expertise with those perhaps from other parts of the country who could really learn from that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Again, I thank all our panelists for being here and for volunteering your time to be with us. I'm going to start the session by asking our college professors to introduce themselves, their faculty, and tell us where you're from and a little bit about what you teach and perhaps your own education. And we'll start on the far right with Lisa.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. My name is Lisa Johns. I am the Director of Learning Assistance and Assessment at the Tomas Rivera Center at UTSA. And so my experience is working with students and learning assistants, so that would be my perspective today. And I also teach a freshman seminar course. So that is a study skills-based class for new freshmen, particularly. And I have a bachelor's degree in psychology from Texas A&M University, Kingsville, and I did my undergraduate work at Texas State University. And I also have a bachelor's degree in psychology.
I'm a professor of biology at UTSA. I teach undergrad genetics, graduate molecular biology, contemporary biology, which is our non-majors intro course. I've also taught freshman seminar in the past. I also participate in the orientation, doing what we call our academic preview, where we try to let our incoming students see how much work they're going to have to do when they're in the classroom. And I think that this is a very worthwhile program because so many of the kids in our contemporary class, in our majors class, are not prepared. We have about a 40 to 50% failure rate in our intro science classes.
Hello, I'm Amber Auburn, and I am a professor in the political science department at St. Mary's, and I also am the director of the undergraduate international relations program. It's a separate major, and I teach courses from introductory level courses such as understanding global politics up to senior level courses which pertain to regional politics, Asian politics, European, Latin American, as well as international relations theory, and then graduate level courses pertaining to national security and research methods. I am born and raised in Texas, grew up in San Antonio, went to high school here on the north side, Clark graduate, and went to UTSA for undergrad. My degree was in Spanish, and my master's was from St. Mary's in international relations, and my doctorate was from University of North Texas in political science.
I'm John Lee. I'm a professor of history at San Antonio College. I'm also coordinator of our Honors Academy. I teach U.S. history and world history as freshman, sophomore level courses. I advise history majors and international studies majors. I have a bachelor's degree in international studies from Virginia Tech. I have a master's degree from Yale University in international studies, and I have a PhD in history from UT Austin.
I am Pat Fontenot. I'm the Dean of Workforce Education and Training at Northwest Western College, and it's probably the area of the college you least knowledgeable about. We are responsible for the academic workforce programs that a student earns a certificate or associate applied science degree in. And really these programs are designed to put a student to work within a year or 2 years, because we teach those unique skills that are in demand out there for employment. So it's an important area. A lot of students, can't see those 4 years, getting that degree, 4 years, need to go to work. Well, they will major in one of the workforce programs. I'm also responsible for English as a second language, community programs, kids programs, robotics, and of course all the academic workforce programs. My education is in computer information systems, computer science. I have also a 20-year military career, and I bring kind of a unique perspective to you because I'm also a parent of a daughter who just completed her 3rd year at the University of Michigan, which means she's going to be graduating this year, this coming year. So, I've been through a lot of things a lot of parents are going to be facing when their kids graduate. So.
Thank you all. These are some of the things that we're going to be covering today, but this is by no means all that we're going to cover. We are going to, of course, we had the self-introductions. We're going to talk about some topics like classroom participation, how much should students be preparing outside the classroom, some fun things like classroom etiquette. Things have changed a little since we've been in school. They didn't have cell phones when I was in college, so things have changed a little bit, and different professors have different perspectives on that. So this is some of the things, but again, I want you to feel free to add your own topics. So I'm going to start it off, but if anyone wants to change that a little and ask about other things, or if these topics lead to other questions, this is informal. So let me go ahead and open it up to the whole panel, and let's talk about students in the classroom for a moment, if we could, and talk about participation. I know students get a syllabus still, right? Maybe they get it through email now or through their phone, I don't know, but they get a syllabus handout, and I guess it's broken up so they know how much everything counts. So talk about that if you would. The syllabus and class participation, how important is that?
I'll begin. Class participation in a freshman seminar course is paramount, especially in a skills-based course. We're actually teaching students different strategies to use across disciplines and in all their other college courses. These are research-based strategies that have proven to work and promote success. So you don't really know it until you do it. So students have to participate. There's a lot of group interaction. As you probably know, getting students to be engaged in the classroom is very important. And so we do a lot less lecture in a freshman seminar. We actually do a lot of group activities and try to make sure that students are able to practice the strategies that we're teaching them in class, so that if they have any questions before they actually get to using them in the other classes, then we can answer those questions. And I think there's no choice in the matter. Participation is very important.
I think a big problem though is we have classes, intro bio is about 400 students, for genetics class is about 175. And it's very important that the students are participatory, but it's different. That does not mean conversation, that does not mean one-on-one discussion with the professor. It means that they're actually active. A lot of students, when they walk into a classroom and they say, oh, this is great, 450 people, I can sit way in the back, I'll get online, I'll check my Facebook, and this will be a fun class for me. And they don't realize that active does not mean that the professor is watching you and directly interacting with you. It means that your brain is plugged in. And the biggest thing for the students, I tell them, is their greatest success is going to come from 3 people: themselves, because they have to put in the determination to succeed; the people that sit around them, because the best way to learn for them is going to be with their peers. And that includes in the classroom, where they need to sit with people and have interactions. And by that I don't mean what are you doing Friday night or whatever, but to be saying, I didn't get that, did you understand that? Trying to learn during the classroom. And then finally the professor. And most of them feel that the only time that they have with the professor is that 3 hours a week. And they don't realize how important office hours are. And frankly, they're scared spitless of their professors. I've had so many people come up to me and say, well, I wanted to come talk to you, but you're so scary. I would say, I've got a 20-pound dog that bosses me around all the time, so I'm not that scary. But the students find this to be very intimidating. And if they don't take that first step of walking in the door and finding out that there's no moat, there's no alligators, we don't call them dumb when they walk in and don't understand something, they never show up and they never start talking. So if they don't get those 3 main avenues of support going, then they're not going to do very well.
Well, first, for whatever reason, they're not as scared of me as they are of you. I'm not as intimidating, but actually participation at St. Mary's, usually the classrooms are smaller, and so there is an expectation that students will be participating more regularly, especially as they advance. And just thinking about the basics, what does participation entail? It's mainly showing up to class and at least appearing to be interested in the subject matter. I'm not necessarily a professor who makes them close their laptops or not look on their cell phones, because sometimes you don't really know what they're doing. They could be taking notes, and they're really multitaskers, I've noticed. They could probably be doing one thing and smiling at their computer, and then you ask them a question and they'll answer it like that. So to assume that just because they're not sharing eye contact with you, that they're not paying attention, is probably not necessarily accurate. But participating participation then would also include, meaning that the student came to the classroom having done the readings or whatever the preparation was so that they can actively engage in discussion. Participation also includes asking what they would think of as dumb questions. I usually tell them, ask the question, because whatever it is, everybody else wants to know too, or at least half the class wants to know, and you'll be the brave one, and I'll write you a really great recommendation letter just for doing that. But then, also nowadays we have Blackboard and WebCT, which are the online discussion boards, grade books, all of that kind of thing. There are areas for students to be able to discuss with their peers, and oftentimes faculty members will count that toward the grade, or they'll give them extra credit points for participating in that form. Just because students participate in different ways, some are more extroverted. They'll share, like my grandma told me a story. Okay, slightly pertinent, maybe not. And then others will have all these ideas, but they're not particularly open. They're the more introverted types who like to think before they speak, and I'm not familiar with that kind of behavior.
I am. To get back to your original question, it is a state law in Texas now. I don't know if you're aware that all syllabi have to be placed online 3 clicks away from the homepage. So it actually would be a good resource for you to go show the students a college syllabus. I think that what we've kind of noticed here too is that there's several different kinds of classes they're going to have the first year in college. It's important for them to think about that if they go to this school, they're going to have a classroom of 400 people. They go to community college, it's going to be capped at 30, 35, and that they should think about that. In terms of participation, yeah, I agree with everything. I say the same thing to them. It's not necessarily raising your hand, it's are you actively engaged? And there are many ways to demonstrate that. And I tell them, if you're distracting me because you're not engaged, then I'm not 100%, and you're hurting your colleague, your neighbor, because they're paying for that, and I need to be 100%. So I've embraced the whole smartphone technology. I say, well, you don't know what this word means? Let's look it up. Or they ask them, they like facts and history. They go, is it true that they found cocaine in mummies? Look it up. Look it up. Let's keep going here. We've been having this conversation in my department, and I'm kind of like, where have you been? Smartphones have been around for 5 years, but anyway, when I was chair for a while, during meetings, I'd watch all my administrators texting, so I'm like, I'm with you. If they can shoot a quick text, stay with the material, but not all professors are going to be that way, and it's really important to stress to them that in high school, they're kind of used to a certain uniformity, and in college, it's just going to be so different every class they go into.
And the syllabus is a wealth of information in there, and my philosophy is if I'm going to demand anything of the student, it needs to be a syllabus. And I ask all faculty that I'm responsible for to do the same thing. I mean, showing them what their grades are going to be. Hey, if you don't show up for class 3 days in a row, then you'll get dropped, and can't come to a surprise to you when you're dropped and you don't because of not showing up in class. So the syllabus, when I get questions and I know the answers are in the syllabus, I'll just refer them to the syllabus because we spend a lot of time on the syllabus to put this information in there, and if they're not reading it, then we're wasting our time. So that's one of the demands I make of the students. As far as participation, when I was in the classroom, absolutely ditto everything they said. Participation is tough. Engaging the students. I, way back, had 6 in the morning classes, and ED students came and their eyes were wide open, but I know they were asleep. So it was even tougher for me to get them engaged. So it's, and if they think, online classes, they don't have to actively engage, wrong. They do online classes also, they have to show that they're participating.
One of the things that the benefits of AP or dual credit, I think, besides, of course, dual credit counting on as a college class, that I've heard is that students who take those classes get used to rigor. They get used to having to read and having to do homework. And so sometimes if they've been in a really tough class and then they get to college, it's not a huge deal because they've been used to that. can we talk about preparation outside the classroom or homework? I've heard from other professors and other parts of the state that students need to get used to doing homework, and for you guys as well, maybe you can tell us, is that something that is happening very much in high schools? Are they getting lots of homework now? And then how much, again, do college students need to be prepared to work outside the classroom?
Okay, I'll start again. In learning assistance, we have students who come in for academic coaching. It's a one-on-one experience. So a student will make an appointment and come in and sit down with an academic coach and talk about the difficulties that they're having in class. It's not about the content of the course, it's about the skills that are required that you can use across disciplines again. So when a student comes in, especially a freshman, and they say, I don't have any homework, how am I supposed to know what I'm doing wrong? But I didn't do well on my first test. Well, your homework is actually reading. Like, when you get your syllabus, you need to go through all of your syllabi. You need to make notes, use a planner, make note of all of your tests, all of your major projects. And then whenever I teach a freshman seminar course, all of that information, I break it down week by week, all of the different kinds of assignments that are going to be required. And because freshman seminar is really, I consider it to be a bridge course. We have a lot of students who come in to UTSA. It's a 4-year institution, and so a lot of the classes are larger. But my class is capped at 25 students, so I have a very close-knit group, hopefully, and we talk about following your syllabus and making sure that you make note of the different due dates and all of your projects. So it's really important to look closely at your syllabus. It's important to acknowledge that you are going to have homework, that your homework is going to be, a lot of your learning is going to be outside of the classroom. I think it's very different than it is in high school, where you actually do a large majority of your learning outside the classroom. So particularly for a freshman seminar, because it's a bridge course, helping them adjust to the differences from high school to college, there is quite a bit of homework, and almost every class I'll give them homework.
Could we backtrack a little, Miss Lisa?
Yes, sure.
Quickly, just because if you only get 25 students, how many of these incoming freshmen, when there's thousands of them, know of this Tomas Rivera Center or go through a freshman seminar? Because I know that's usually a cluster of a certain amount of students that take the same history class and possibly the same English class.
Right.
Now, if all students don't have that, how do they learn to kind of get that calendar, learn those time management skills, which so many college students have a hard time doing?
What you're talking about, we offer, the Tomas Rivera Center offers those services in a variety of ways. So we have learning communities that actually have the freshman seminar attached to several different classes. So there's a cluster of classes that these students are in, like 3 different classes together. And one of those classes will be embedded with a whole bunch of learning communities, and it'll be a large lecture class. So a lot of times the study skills-based freshman seminar instructor will teach to that and use to that large lecture class and use that as an example. The other ways that students learn about the Tomas Rivera Center is when they come for freshman orientation, we are heavily involved with freshman orientation. We are talking to the students, we are talking to the parents. Dr. Castle participates in our academic preview. So they have a variety of ways that they're learning about the Tomas Rivera Center and all of the academic support programs that we have to offer students. And even though Learning Communities is a limited number of freshman seminar courses, all students who come to UTSA are eligible to receive the services through the Tomas Rivera Center. So if they can't be in a freshman seminar course, then they can come to any of our group workshops. If they don't like group, then they can come to any of our academic coaching sessions. They can make appointments and get set up to start meeting with a coach. And we can talk about all of these things, the time management and organizational skills. We have a lot of students who come in at the very beginning of each semester because they realize that they're kind of, you know, not the greatest organizers, or they're not the best at time management. And so we help them get set up for the semester. And then maybe they might not come back again until the beginning of the next semester when they have another class load and they need to get situated and they need to get prepared and then just kind of put on the right track. And then we have some students who come throughout the semester because there's no limit to the number of sessions. You pay for these services through the tuition and fees that you're already paying, so we always encourage students to participate in these services.
Before we move on, I want to just check in with Harlandale and Northside and make sure you all can hear us okay. We had an air conditioner go on here a little while ago, so can you all hear us okay? Do we need to speak up a little bit?
We can hear you fine.
Okay, great. Good. Harlandale, y'all doing okay?
We're good, Belinda.
Okay, good. But you all brought up a very important point that I want to just stop on for just a moment, and that is the time management and planning and putting your assignments down. And I think that even the brightest student, if they are not organized, not keeping track of their assignments, are going to have a hard time. And I know that some of the really great college prep programs, things like Gear Up, they really stress planners for their students. And I'm wondering if other students who are not in programs like Gear Up or Avid, or if they're working with planners, and if that's something that we should just make sure all high school students get to help them start to learn to manage their time and to get ready for an academic setting beyond high school.
If I may, I'd like to comment on that because all our student developmental classes or orientation classes provides students with planners. And I can tell you from experience, again, I'm going to use my daughter as the example. When she was a freshman in high school, I would bring home one of our college planners, and we taught her how to use it. And she uses it to this day. Matter of fact, every start of the fall of semester, she'll tell me, "Dad, send me a new planner, send me a new planner." Well, you know, you can't just throw the planner in your bag and never make an entry. But it's so important to use that planner, organize your day. So absolutely, the planner is, you know, necessary.
I had a comment. To kind of piggyback off the importance of the syllabus, I definitely think it's important to not only identify those issues early with students, but to encourage that communication with professors and teachers. I see that, you know, specifically in middle school with the Gear Up, that's where we're working. But a lot of students, they don't understand that you can go talk to your teacher and let them know about struggles that you're having, or you foresee a conflict of you not going to be able to do homework because of issues at home or whatever it may be. But to go to that teacher, to identify those issues early, and to start encouraging that communication with their teachers in middle school, it'll follow you through high school. So when it comes, you know, to a professor, that is not a problem. I mean, that was how I was in school. I never had a problem talking with teachers because that was just something that came very easily to me ever since elementary school. Both my parents and educators, but it helped me along the way because I knew that if I needed assistance, if something wasn't quite right, if I had questions, I never had doubt that I had that communication avenue. And I think it's just really important to emphasize that and to start preparing students now to engage in that conversation with their teachers and not to be intimidated by that.
I think you're hitting on, to me, you know, I'm coming from a community college perspective, is that the biggest problem is teaching a student to be a successful college student. It's a different skill set, because in high school, if they don't show up, someone's going to track them down. I know a lot of high schools are moving towards, you get to resubmit an assignment, you get to retake a test. And I'm not against that, I have no problem. So when they come to college, they're expecting the same thing. And in particular, what we're dealing with is a lot of first generation college students. I was successful because I competed with my sister. She was good. But a lot of these kids are the first to do this. And that's what we're trying to work out in this Honors Academy thing is how do we turn you into a successful college student? And it's not just innate ability to think, it's learning how to be a successful college student. And you guys do wonderful, wonderful things, but I think what happens when they come to college, they're like, they didn't know what they're talking about. That was high school and everything. So I would just really, really stress those things. And, you know, I don't do a planner. That would never work for me. But what we try to tell them is that, you know, you got to find out what works for you.
Right.
There's some classes, some students can take my class, pick up everything in the classroom, be effective note takers, and they do really well. Others have to really do the reading. You know, I had to really, really work outside the classroom in math, but other, you know, social studies classes came pretty easy for me. So it's, like I said, it's a plan or something, but it's getting them to understand that it's a very different experience from high school.
Well, and one thing I want to say is that what works in one class may not work in another class. So whenever the student, you're right, I agree completely, the student has to find what works for them. And so if they don't know where to begin, at least they can come to, for example, they can come to our office and we can talk about different ways that they can approach a particular class. But absolutely, a student's got to find the right way for them because there is no one way. And so what works in one class may not necessarily work in another class.
And you had a comment over here or question earlier?
I was just going to say that in Northeast, they use planners all the time. And my granddaughter's in second grade and she has a planner. And going from the gear up, when we were in middle school, they all got planners. But they're only effective if they're taught how to use them. And then not just taught how to use them, but continually working with them every single day until it becomes a part of them. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
In education, a very big thing right now is how much you have to unlearn. The students always come in with preconceptions into a genetics class or biology class. And the first thing you have to do is get rid of those because those are ingrained very deeply and they won't win, or those will win out in a conflict with what we're teaching them. And the students have spent the last 15 years or so in a very different system than the college system. K-12 schools are under a lot of pressure to retain students and financial direct pressure. And so there's always a second chance or a third chance or a fourth chance. And what we get all the time is students coming in and saying, okay, I failed all these exams. How do I make that up? And I say, you don't. You fail the course and you take it over again. And I think that there's so much where they've been taught things will be taken care of for you. Another big one is the feedback. Feedback in high school is great. They are getting reports, their parents are getting reports. If they're having troubles, the teacher is on them and saying, hey, you know, this isn't working, you need to be doing this. I give 3 exams. And if they fail that first exam, they're probably done. Because if they get a really low score, they won't be able to make it up by the time we get all the way through finals. And so they have to learn somehow in that first 5 weeks how much work there is. And I don't think they understand that and how much they have to dig up themselves. I took high school physics, I took high school AP physics, and I got to college and realized that that was the first semester of high school physics. Even kids who take rigorous AP courses are not getting a college level. I'm not supposed to say that, but when we have kids who come in and they say, oh, I'm going to AP out of bio, I tell them, then you will probably fail genetics. Because that's what we see over and over again. The kids who come in and they don't take our intro class, they say, oh, I've got AP credit. They don't get the same level of information. So they think, oh, I'm learning a lot. I was the honors kid in high school. They're potentially in for a really rude shock when they hit college. And it's going to hit them, and it's going to hit them hard, and there won't be a repair for that. And that's something you really have to stress to them. They have to walk in the door thinking, I have to be striving right now harder than I was in high school. What was honors in high school may be a C level when they hit college. Not because they're dumb, but as was mentioned here, it's a different approach. And a big part of it too is how much is given to you. When my kids, they're now freshmen in college, and we realized that a lot of their high school classes, they weren't reading their books. They didn't have to, because there were these little bold sentences, and all they had to do was read the bold sentences, and they got all the knowledge that they needed. So here we are in genetics, we hand them a 650-page book, and we say, this is what we're covering this semester. And they are expected to get all of the information in there. And there are some little bold words here and there, but there aren't a lot. They really have to dig in, and they're not used to it. And I think the biggest problem they have is they don't realize how they're responsible for finding the resources. They have teachers, they've had counselors, people that talk to them every day and say, you're not supposed to be doing this, you should be doing this. We've got incredible resources.
We do.
But how many students do you have going there?
I want to stress for just a moment that there's, I guess, one of the biggest differences and one of the obvious differences for K-12 to college is that in K-12, they're kids, they're not adults. And when they get to college, they are adults. And so we begin to treat them as adults. And so that was one of the things that when I worked in freshman orientation is when you come to college, you're an adult and we're going to treat you like an adult. And I think that's one of the big obvious differences. But I think that regarding the rigor, one of the things that we are beginning to do better is the vertical alignment. I think we all have a long way to go in that area, but those, as you said, is very important as K-12 and higher ed work together to make sure that we are aligning things so that students are prepared. And so yes, we do have work to do there, but the conversations that we've had already are critical to helping students get ready for the next step. I want to move back to, for just a moment, the questions. We talked a little bit about time management, and the word, the phrase, the hot phrase is soft skills, right? Time management and planning. But let's talk about academically. And what can students do in high school now to prepare for the college classroom? You talked about being, as a kid, feeling comfortable speaking with your teachers. I think that one of the things that I heard when I was a kid in elementary and middle is work on your own, work independently. Don't copy, don't look on. But then as we get to college and even in the workplace and perhaps now in high school, students are being encouraged to work more in groups. So you had a comment over there.
In terms of preparing students for college, I'm coming from Incarnate Word as an admissions counselor. I was there for 4 years. So I had the opportunity to really see hands-on what students are bringing to the table, pretty much, what kind of skills they had acquired. And I think one thing that is kind of taken for granted in this age with students, yes, they're always on their phone, yes, they're always on a computer. Sure, they know how to look up the game scores from, last night or who's doing what. But when it comes to really understanding and knowing how to do proper research and find those resources on their own and look at different sources, they really do not know how to do that. So when you're coming into even your freshman classes where you require them to write a paper and consult 3 different sources that do not include, Wikipedia, it's like, come on. It's unfortunate that even in some of our graduate classes, I still have colleagues that consult Wikipedia as though that's something. So it's still somehow or another filtering through that people just really do not have those skills to do proper research and to find those sources that do help them. Because most of the time we're doing anyway is borrowing other knowledge. And I think that's one of those critical things that students just really don't know how to do. Even when it comes to navigating a website. I always get calls all the time about, where can I find this on a website? It's like, do you not know how to put in keywords? I mean, I wouldn't say that, but I would think, like, how simple is it to just navigate a college website to look for certain things? And a lot of times they just don't.
And I think that goes back to what Professor Lee said about helping them to be successful students in general, but also successful college students. Those little things are very, very critical.
Linda, I'd like to say that in our center, those are the kinds of things that we would help students with. We would actually get on the computer and help them learn how to do those things. Another resource is the library. They have librarians that would actually help them learn how to do resource and do research and find different resources. And if they have the opportunity to participate in learning assistance programs, then they can learn the difference between what is an appropriate source and what is not. Wikipedia is not, obviously, but not all, but the majority of colleges and universities have some type of learning assistance program who would be able to help them with that kind of information. So you're right, there's not as many students using the services as we'd like, but we've just got to continue to encourage students to come. We've got to continue marketing to the students. And so one thing that you as educators can do is begin to talk to students about these things so that whenever they come to whatever X university, then they know to look for this information. Where's the learning assistance program? Where's the tutoring center? Do they have an SI program on this campus? And so those are different kinds of academic support programs that are going to be able to help them learn some of those skills that may not come so naturally to them.
We had a question or comment over here.
How do you market that information on your campus?
Lots of different ways. We have.
Do you have professors that require students to go on to get this service?
We need to do that. I know.
Because that would help so much.
Students don't do optional. That's the new phrase. Students don't do optional. And so if you want them to go to the writing center, we need to make them go to the writing center. It's required.
And it needs to be done before they fail,
Absolutely.
like you were talking about the fact that if they fail your first test, well, then they're really done for the rest of the semester. Student gets on academic probation and all of that stuff. I mean, it's really, an injustice to them. I mean, they really, I know that the expectations are there, and I certainly understand that. But I feel like, the communication also, like if they're told at the very beginning, and I don't know if they are or not, I haven't been there in a very long time.
In several different kinds of ways.
But I mean, the students really do need to know, what's going to happen should they fail that first test and things like that. I
That's
just kind
the
of.
unlearning.
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly,
right.
that's exactly what you talked
Right.
about, I understand, but I'm just concerned that, they wouldn't, I would hate for them to be on academic probation or, not know about, your center until they fail the test. I mean, that's kind of like,
Right. Well, but they do get that information at freshman orientation, at info tables. The thing is that it's not applicable to them at that point.
time.
They don't relate to the information because they're not in trouble yet. And so that's why we go into the classroom and we talk, like their first month of class, we're going to go into the classroom and we're going to talk about these warning signs, and don't wait until you've failed your first test. Come early, come often is very frequently a tagline that we use in our office. And so it's going to be talking to them from the very beginning, once they've been admitted, until they come in, and until they actually, unfortunately, realize that they're in trouble. Because for some of them, that's what it's going to take.
I see that as a problem, is that they don't know what trouble is when they get into a college or university. They don't know until it's too late, and by then they're going to talk to their professors, and the professors are going to say, you can go to this program and they can help you, but by then it's too late for them, because in a high school setting, students wait till the last minute, and teachers tend to have them do makeup work and do things like that, which is totally different than the university setting.
Well, and that's, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, in order to address that, thankfully, in a small classroom setting, what I usually do, at least in the introductory level classes where they're required to write so that I can catch these things early on, they submit components of their papers. And early on, I meet with them and actually grade their paper orally, meaning they have to sit and watch me read the paper. So it's when they get really nervous about it. So they don't want to turn in something that's just horrible. So they'll at least try. And then I tell them, I notice a pattern here. You tend to have some grammar issues. You need to go to the Learning Assistance Center. And in fact, I'm going to write out this form that says you have to go. And if you do not go, you're not going to pass this class. And so the thing is, though, it requires a lot of work, and sometimes faculty don't have the kind of support to be able to do something like that, or they have really large classrooms. But there are attempts to try to catch some of those things early, but probably a lot of this also pertains to the big message that high school students need to have, and it pertains to time management, time spent outside the classroom, is go to college knowing that most of your work will take place outside of the classroom.
Yes.
For every 3 hours of class, you will spend about at least 9 hours of work outside of the classroom. It's a full-time job. Just like your parents had full-time jobs, you have a full-time job, and it's studying. And so that's going to mean that you're reading the material, you have your syllabi, you map it all up in your planner or however you do it, and you expect that you will be reading. And if you can only read for 10 minutes at a time, break it up into those little increments. If you can walk 5 minutes on a treadmill, you can read for 5 minutes. So, just telling them, break it up, but you have to take ownership of your education and see the classroom and the teacher not as this authoritarian figure, but as a forum where you go to discuss what you've read and where you also go to get supplemental information. Most of the tests will come from the reading materials. The professor may go and talk about what he did this weekend, which would be terrible, but maybe that's the opening line, but that's not going to be on the test. The professor will give stories and anecdotes and analogies to supplement the readings, but you absolutely have to do the readings. Sometimes professors will pull tests from the publisher that they themselves did not even devise, and so students need to go knowing you are going to do a lot of work outside of the classroom if you want to do well. And if you don't, you're probably not going to do as well, and it's going to depend on, of course, biology. That would have killed me, and it did.
There's another unlearning that's very important, which is that for high school students, guidance counselor, tutoring, those are bad things. That's a mark, especially for the smarter kids.
They
That's
think,
a mark that
yeah,
you're having
they
trouble.
think it's a bad thing.
And so they get to college, and this idea of going to the counseling center, going to a tutor, going to get this kind of assistance, they sit there and say, well, I'm not in trouble, I don't need that. And my wife always says, David Robinson had a coach. Okay, he was one of the top basketball players. He understood he could be a better basketball player. So he was always going to a coach and saying, help me become better and better and better. But the students are, oh, that's only if you're in deep trouble. Right. Unless you hit that point, don't go. That's for losers. Yeah.
We talked about that before, just about the different languages, and I used the word retention. Well, in K-12, you've been retained, that's a bad thing. In higher ed, we've retained you, wow, that's wonderful. So just the different phrases. I do want to open it up before I turn it over to Irene to Harlandale or Northside. Do you all have any questions or comments for our panel? Okay, then let me turn it over to Irene then, because I know she had a comment a moment ago.
Yes, I wanted to ask you a question. You talked a few minutes ago about the students that take AP classes and that you recommend that they take the biology first. And I'm just wondering, like, when they meet with their advisor, they are told that, right? That they should go ahead and retake that class because, we're talking to our students and we're promoting AP classes and we're letting them know that this is an advantage and this is why it's an advantage and you won't have to, take it again and that's going to save you money on tuition and things like that. So, I feel like we're, going against what you're talking about now. And
I want to jump in, and I want to respectfully disagree with my colleague. I was actually on the AP World History Redesign Commission, and that is a very rigorous course. If they pass that test, they're probably better than most of my B students or A students. I'm not going to speak for biology, but study after study shows that if they take AP courses, even if they don't take the test, even if they only get a 2 on the test, they're better prepared for college. So I would say keep promoting it. I don't think they should take so many. I know that's the new trend. When I was in high school, we took 1. I know now they try to take 5 or 6 or whatever, but I from the work I've done with that, I think it's a very good curriculum, very rigorous curriculum.
I mean, and I'll say this, with my own kids, when I told them, they took a bunch of AP classes, I said, if it's in your major, I recommend that you retake the class, because that's the place where you really need the rigor. If it's not in your major, I think you've done as well. And I think biology in some ways is its own special case. Yeah.
Let me turn it over to, we had a comment over there.
No, I think he just.
Did he get it? Okay. All right.
I would like to acknowledge you guys because I've been hearing a lot of talk from ex-seniors, and I know that a lot of you now meet with groups of seniors to get to know them and to help them out, and I think y'all are doing that above and beyond. I don't know if every one of you does that, but I know that our ex-seniors are coming back and and saying, yes, we meet with our professors on a regular basis outside of class, and I just think that's wonderful, because we never had that, but that's great to hear that some of you professors are doing that.
I want to, as we get ready to wrap up the session, it's kind of flown by here. I want to ask this question because I think sometimes it surprises students or even surprises the folks in the audience that these folks may not always have been superstar students, and or they may have known from the very beginning. And I think it's helpful sometimes as you see the kids in front of you to realize, oh, that person's going to be a professor, or that person's going to be a doctor. And I want to ask our panelists, who was that one person that encouraged you to further your education or go into your field? Can you tell us briefly who that person was for you?
Oh, for me, it was my Uncle Sam. I was in the military. I was an enlisted guy and part of professional development. And to get promoted, you had to go back to school and get your education. So I thank Uncle Sam.
I don't really have an answer to that. It was just always expected that this is what you were going to do. And that's what I'm really focused on now as a professor. My dad went to college, all his siblings went to college, my siblings went to college. I had to kind of fight to say I want to pursue this idea of being a history professor because they were like, if you do well in college, you should be a doctor or a lawyer. So I know that individuals have this role. I think you guys have this role a lot too. But for me, it was just expected. You're going to go to college, and there was a question you said earlier before they got here about how involved should a family be when someone goes to college, and I say very involved, very, very involved. I just want to add one thing: any parent that's encouraging their student to work full time while they're going to school, that's just wrong. And I see this all the time, and the parents got to be supportive. If they can't afford the senior institution, go to the community college the first couple of years. But the parent has to have that expectation. You're going to college, and you're going to do well in college.
I'll have to agree. There was just the expectation early on, although my dad is a plumber and my mom's a secretary. My mom doesn't have a college degree. My dad does. He went to college, but liked being a plumber. He likes working with his hands to this day, so that's just what he decided to do.
Makes lots of money, probably.
And, yeah, and of course, he got his degree in education, and as you know, plumbing pays better. So, maybe not over time, but there was just always this expectation, and I always loved school. It was more a matter of where are you going to go, and that was later in life. But my parents, because they are a little bit old school, did expect me to work. I did have to work through college.
Just don't work full time.
I just worked 30 hours a week, and I was a full-time student. Well, I worked at USAA actually. I was and I gained a lot of valuable experience working at USAA for 5 years. And that was what I did. I went to work and I went to school, and I went to work and I went to school. My situation was different than some people's, but you adapt. If you want something badly enough, you're going to get it. And some of the students, I tell them, if they say, well, I couldn't wake up because my alarm clock was off, I say, you just don't want it badly enough. Yes, I don't. No, you don't. No, you don't. Prove it. That kind of thing. Because if you want it, you'll get it. And as far as the PhD goes, when it came to graduate school, now that's where my parents were like, hold on, what are you doing? My mom's like, why do you need a graduate degree? What are you going to do, think all day? And actually, I get paid to do that now. And yes, I wanted to think all day. And I still had to find my own path to be able to do that. And the one who made me ultimately think I do want to get a PhD was Dr. Larry Hufford from St. Mary's University. I would sit and talk to him, and he would drink coffee, and we'd talk about things. I was like, see, that's what I want to do for a living. Drink coffee and talk about things. But, it's a little bit more involved than that. So, but I'd say, a number of folks. But
my grandfather was a common labor immigrant, and every single one of his kids went to college. About half of them went on to get graduate degrees. My father was an art professor. My mother was an art historian at the Cleveland Museum of Art. The expectation was always there. What was interesting is that the expectation was always there, but the field was wide open. And so there I went in originally into physics, eventually switched over to genetics, and the support was always there. And I think that's something that is very important for you guys to keep in mind. For many of your students' parents, this is a completely foreign and fairly scary world. And the difference of having, I remember the first time I got a gift from my grandfather. He gave me $3, and my parents took that when I was 4 years old, and they put it into my college savings account. We had a little ceremony, went down to the bank. You are getting ready to go to college with this $3. That would go anywhere. But that was from the beginning the expectation. And for a lot of parents, it's such a weird foreign idea. They've never been there. It's an unwelcoming world to them. And you guys are the ones that can be that bridge, because you obviously have been through the education system, and you can tell them about how it's friendly and helpful. You have to work hard, but there are all these things that will assist you, and that will reassure them to encourage their kids to continue on with it.
I say ditto. It was always an expectation. Neither one of my parents had a college degree. My father was a drilling supervisor for Arco Oil and Gas, and he had an 8th grade education. But they always wanted better. I'm one of 6 kids, and so they always wanted us to go to college. Some of us did. Some of us decided not to, and that was okay too. But my brother was a huge influence. He's the only person that I know that from the time he was probably in 5th grade, he knew what he wanted to do, and he did it. And he's a physician, and he knew that there was going to be a lot expected out of him. And then whenever it came time for me to graduate from high school and to go on to college, he expected the same from me. And so I didn't do so well my first year. I was one of those students who did really well in high school. I didn't have to study. I made A's. I graduated 3rd in my class, and I got to college and really felt kind of lost. I didn't know about learning assistants or the programs that were available, and he said, that's okay. Everybody makes mistakes, but I am investing in you, and so you really need to figure it out. Like, where are you going on campus to get help? And I'm like, there's help on campus. And he's like, oh yeah. So he had a huge influence, and tried to discourage me from majoring in psychology. But once he figured it out that was the thing I was going to do, then he was like, okay, well then put 100% into it. So.
Frankie, you'll have our closing comment.
It's actually a question, and it's for the whole panel. Yes. Most of you said that it was kind of expected, and it was something that was just, innate maybe, or just there already. I guess personally, and for the demographic of students I work with, and some of us work with, it's not expected. And parents expect a high school diploma, and that's fair enough, so you can go to the workforce. For Dr. Lee, you talked earlier about we don't teach our students to transition when they go from high school to college, working at the community college. And you talked about them not knowing where to find those resources. What do I tell my students when they tell me, how do I prepare for college? What would you say? Or why is it important? How do we change this whole idea or ideology of it needing to become something that's expected?
Okay, if I'm understanding your question correctly, why do they need to go to college? Not necessarily to be history or psychology majors, but I just did this in my class the other day too. In the 1950s, an auto worker could make the same amount of money I'm making, if not more. We don't have much of a manufacturing base anymore. Now, it's not for everybody. I mean, like a plumber, I know the plumber came over and it looked fun and he makes more money than me, and I'm like, wow, I could have done that. But for most people, in this information age, in our post-industrial economy, in our economy that's driven by the service sector, that's where the good paying jobs are. And without some form, even if it's just an associate's degree, a post-secondary education, they're kind of limiting their options. They're kind of limiting their economic mobility. If they don't want to go to college or grad school, that's fine. Don't work for a while. I agree with that. But at some point, even if it's just, I mean, San Antonio College offers so many applied sciences degrees, and business administration and nursing and mortuary science. I mean, those guys make a lot of money. But generally speaking, people who go on to be in the middle class have some college education.
And I think that as we end this session, I think part of your bigger question is how do we begin to create that expectation for the kids and create what we call the college-going culture, so that if they're not naturally getting it at home because their parents are also not college graduates, how do we, and when I say college, I want to be clear that, as I always say, that I mean education beyond high school. I don't necessarily mean a 4-year or a PhD. I mean education beyond high school. That we need to create that expectation with programs like this, wonderful programs like Gear Up, what's happening across the city with the Student Aid Saturdays and the College Week we had last year, when the advisor for Arnie Duncan was here, Greg Darnadir was here a few months ago. He said that what is happening in San Antonio is something that he doesn't see across the country. So I think that in San Antonio we do have a long way to go, but we are ahead of the game as opposed to what's happening across the country. So I think these are important. So what we're doing now, this conversation, just changing our vocabulary and saying when you go to college instead of if you go to college, just changing that one word can certainly help make a difference. I want to thank our panelists so much for being here, for sharing your expertise. Thank you for all who attended all of these sessions. I want to remind you to please fill out your evaluation. We do read these, and we are going to have a debriefing to talk about the summaries of all the evaluations, talked about what worked well, what we can improve, and I read these. I want to thank you all for sharing your comments. I want to remind you as we close of some events that are happening across the city to help students get ready for college, and that is May 12th, we're having our Saturday Parent-Student Workshop with Nippy Bets. It's the last one of the year, and we will have a student and parent panel going on, so please visit our website to find out about that. Student Aid Saturdays are wrapping up with the Cinco de Mayo Financial Aid Fiesta, and you can find more about that on the Café College website, but it's Saturday, May 5th at Café College, Northeast Lakeview, Northwest Vista, Palo Alto, Sac, and St. Phillips. So go to their website to find out what to bring. Also, if you are interested in learning more about the Sac Honors Academy, Professor Lee has given us his contact information, and please give him a call or email him if you're interested in getting more information about that for your students. And so again, that number is 486-1097 if you'd like to give him a call. And I do want to again thank you all so much for being with us. Please complete your survey, turn it into your site host. And thank you again for all of the things that you are doing to help us get San Antonio College and career ready. Thank you so much.